Good morning, viewers. Welcome to Frankly Speaking with Vibhuti Jha. As we all know, this is the season of elections in the United States. The world has been going through a real topsy-turvy times, if I may use that phrase, with reference to Wuhan virus. I call it Wuhan virus. I'm still not got to use saying COVID-19, but it emanated from Wuhan laboratory. Who did it? Why it happened? What kind of a situation is this? But it has caused a turmoil in the world around. Millions of peoples have been affected. Economies have been upended. Trillions of dollars have vanished from the market. And many jobs are not going to come back. The industrial analysis is that more than 40% of the jobs are not going to come back. And people have begun to work from home. The entire social, economic, political spectrum has changed. And to that end, I personally feel that the world leadership today must determine how this damn thing happened. Because it's very important, because people for minor infringements and minor criminal acts spend time in jail. And when the impact of this particular act has to be ascertained, the guilty has to be punished. Nobody must take advantage of the rule of law. The US elections are happening in the background or the backdrop of this upheaval, that presidential candidates are not able to campaign, and even the convention is threatened with reference to indoor things. So let's jump into the conversation of the elections. And there was a very interesting news today, and that is something which I'm going to allude to, because there is a lot of polling that happens. And the polls indicate that Mr. Biden is leading Trump on every single aspect. And people remind that, hey, 2016 also there were polls. But there was a comment that we have fixed the flaws in the polls last time. These polls are far more accurate. Now, to discuss this matter in its entirety, I have great pleasure in welcoming Mrs. Purnima Nath. She is a Wisconsin resident, an author, a writer, entrepreneur, and deeply involved in public service. She's an engineer and also an MBA from Northwestern Kellogg University. And now she's into NGOs and doing things that she believes in. So Purnima ji, welcome to the program. And I want you to kick off by talking to you about how are the odds in favor of Trump this time out?
Well, namaskar, everybody. Thank you so much for having me in your show, Vibhuti ji. I appreciate it. I would start with this. You started with one of the interesting comment about Wuhan virus. You couldn't move from Wuhan virus to COVID. I would say I'm not really a politically correct person. I always saying the truth as is, calling spade as a spade. So calling it as a Wuhan virus is the right thing for me. And I wouldn't call it as a COVID either. It was interesting how it has moved from Chinese coronavirus to Wuhan virus to COVID-19 in a very short span of time. It was all because we wanted to showcase as if we are not hurting somebody and etc. like that. I think that politically correctness is a death sentence. We are at a point of our life that we see tremendously that we are unable to express anything honestly. And the trust factor is also going down accordingly. And second thing you mentioned about rule of law. I'll tell you what happened in the last 3.8 years in terms of rule of law. I'm losing faith in the rule of law in this country. If what has happened to Paul Manafort, what has happened to Roger Stone, or what has happened to General Michael Flynn, and to the President of United States, Mr. Donald Trump, if they can set up somebody like that, a billionaire who has the world in his fist, who are we? We are nothing. We're just peanuts. We can be vanished. We can be framed in a fraction of a second and just silenced in a matter of seconds. So to me, this country was have done so much for law. We law-abiding citizens. We follow law. Unfortunately, right now the justice system, the criminal law system is so corrupted that I, as a citizen, I'm afraid to believe that they're going to do the right thing, because even the seats, justice seats, are filled with activist judges. We're
Mhm.
talking about somebody who wants to follow the law versus who wants to make the law as we go on. So there's tremendous amount of corruption that is going on, and unfortunately, it's very similar to what happens in the third world country. I can't we can't see we literally see similarities of what happens in third world countries in terms of political corruptness and system corruptness. And now it's all coming here to United States. Very sad moment for us.
Yes, I totally agree with you. And I'm glad you agree with me on calling it a Wuhan virus the way it is. And I'm like you, not given to political correctness, because what happens with political correctness is that we become dishonest with ourselves, because that is one of the biggest psychological damage that happens to the societies. Because when we become politically correct, which means we are taking everything into account before we make accountability of that issue. So that becomes a big, big no for my point of view. The truth cannot be altered. And that's what is important this time, because you have called this election, 2020 election, as a point of no return.
Yes.
So what do you mean by point of no return? I'll tell you what I mean by my interpretation is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that when Mr. Trump won in 2016, it was against all odds. Nobody thought that he would be able to beat such a celebrity candidate like Hillary Clinton, perhaps the first ever woman to be the president of the United States, but the American people did not choose her. And that brought about a real shift in the way the entire agenda was moving, the liberal agenda was moving forward. So with Mr. Trump coming in, the liberal agenda has been shut down for the last 4 years, 3.5 years, and until he's there. The liberals now fear that if Mr. Trump comes back, their agenda may be derailed forever or for a very, very long time. And that's how you can see that liberals are now becoming more fascists. And that's how to restore the American greatness, because you and I are all immigrants here, so we are not anti-immigrants. What is important here is that none of us went to a socialist country. We came to a country that was prosperous. And America's prosperity is directly linked with capitalist philosophy. And as a result of which, you can put aside the thought that there is an element of greed and capitalists have gone overboard, but that is easier to correct than to follow the policy of appeasement, where the Democratic Party's agenda, two main planks, is unfettered immigration and give things free in a country where there was no free lunch. So express yourself and define this, because I feel that if US were to lose, if Republicans and Trump were to lose, we will see an unleashing of the socialist policies here to fulfill the demands of those who need to be appeased. And that's what I'm concerned about. Your thoughts?
Absolutely. See, when I'll tell you, I'll start this with the fact that why I voted for Trump and why I chose Trump at all. Trump was a breath of fresh air. He is straightforward, he is honest. Now, when you put an honest person along with a polished, I call a career politician who is used to saying things what you want to hear, suddenly you see a difference between somebody who has nothing to do with politics over entire life. He's not a career politician,
Right.
versus somebody who's a politician coming into the scene. And we have also seen by then in terms of what Miss Hillary Clinton has done in terms of weakening our defense systems, our relationship with certain countries in terms of it's literally destabilizing the country at that point. So my choice for Trump was very simple. I know exactly what he is. I know what I can expect. But for Hillary Clinton, I couldn't say the same thing, because she will say something today, she will say something tomorrow. So it's constant flip-flopping that's happening, because she wants to say something that you want to hear, not necessarily what is right for the country or what is right for the society itself. Now, from it, we have seen in the 3.8 years, last 3.8 years in terms of delivery of Trump itself, constant cloud, a black cloud was hovering over his head and shoulder and the entire country in the world in terms of impeachment. Correct? Yet he has done so many things. He has accomplished so many things. He has pulled out of Paris Accord. He has literally moved the embassy to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv. And he has been straightforward, honestly bringing in the law and order back into the country. If you look at the last few weeks or so, you would see law and order constantly in his Twitter feed. This person, besides everything else, whether somebody's character assassinating him or not, whether he gets angry or not, why he is right for this country, there are a few things that I look for in a leader of a country, specifically. Somebody who needs to protect the people of the country, number one. Somebody who will actually protect the border of that nation. Somebody who will also make sure the economy, they implement policies which is going to bring up the economy and job growth and etc. And number four is somebody who's also extremely strict in terms of international policies and foreign policies. And finally, the fifth point is somebody who is God conscious. Now, when you compare with either Hillary Clinton or Biden or even Bill Clinton or even Mr. Obama, I don't see any comparison with anybody to Mr. Trump. So from a definition of how I categorize what a leader should be for a nation's perspective, Trump is a perfect fit. He loves this country. He doesn't demean this country. He respects the country. He's not part of the cancel culture. He's not trying to advocate for destroying statues, removing our history. Every country has a history. You can't change it. Every person has a history, every organization has a history. We must acknowledge that and also implement policies to do better, which is what America has done for the last 100 years. Republican Party is the one who has implemented policies to remove slavery. They've implemented policies to bring those freed slaves to voting and also citizenship. They're the one who brought in Asian Americans. They are the one who, from this party, the first senator, the first House representative was elected. So how can this party be racist to begin with? And how can Donald Trump be racist to begin with? Because he's the one who actually opened his doors for the black citizens for his, I think, one of those casinos. So. Right. And if you look back and see, this person has all the right qualities for a leader. Unfortunately, what we have seen in the last 3.8 years is because he was not bought by anybody. He was not going with the flow that the other people were asking him to do. So, so he was trying to drain the swamp. He was trying to make sure our country doesn't fall into the category where we see a lot of corruption, which is unfortunately still going on. And right. Because of his personality, he is being attacked. Now, anybody in that seat with that kind of personality will be attacked, unfortunately. It's not just yeah. Trump. Unfortunately, you and me and anybody else who's speaking up for the country is going to be attacked at this point. Anybody who wants to even say this country is not racist, they are getting attacked. If you say all lives matter instead of a Black Lives Matter, you are getting shot. If you're walking down the streets with a little kid, they are coming and stabbing you. That's what's happening in New York. So yes. What we are seeing is a complete chaos. It's melting down. And I don't want to say it, but I feel that I've said it before in my Twitter feed about 6, 7, 8 months ago, that we are looking at a war zone. War 3 is coming. World War 3 is coming. And this is, even whether Biden wins or Trump wins, I expect a massive amount of chaos in the streets. It's going to happen everywhere.
I mean, somebody will accuse you of being a fear monger, but sometimes telling the truth. I was in discussion yesterday, and I told somebody that, hey, telling the truth, if it is fearful, is not fear mongering. And that's what is important because one of the biggest advantage of education is that you are able to see through things. What is the impact and implication of things that are happening? So look at this way. This country is a country of laws. The rule of law, the country prides itself in saying so. But those people who are breaking the law in the very first instance, what is happening is that liberty gets eroded and the fear factor comes in. So today, I think on Wednesday evening, New York City Police Commissioner was attacked by somebody. The police is under attack. Now that is a very, very important fundamental aspect, because economic development and social order is a function of maintaining law and order. The system works. And that example, which I give to my Indians back home, is that what you have to admire the trust and element of trust in US system is that even at 2 a.m. or midnight, whether there is anybody on the road or not, you stop at the stop sign. You stop at the red light. You believe that system works. That's the meaning of the system working. Somebody may say it is a frivolous example, but that's the example, but that's what defines people. People are not crisscrossing, crossing the light and breaking the law according to their desire. But what is happening right now is the mayhem let loose by the liberal agenda, who fear that his coming, Mr. Trump, if he wins, the liberal agenda may get derailed. But you also mentioned about Trump's personal qualities and qualities as a politician. And that brings me to a contrast between Biden and Trump. Trump has been a straight president. He has not served in a public office ever. So he's a neophyte when it comes to a political arena. Mr. Biden has been in politics for God knows how many years. And so is Hillary Clinton, Nancy Pelosi, and the entire Chuck Schumer and other senators. 90% of the blacks have voted for Democrats, and they are annoyed today because they feel they are not integrated in the American society. Now, their grievance may be genuine, but the important part is, who should they go to ask? Why did the Democrats fail them? It takes me very eerily. Comparison is with India. The Congress Party treated Muslims as a vote bank, and Democrats are treating people here as vote bank, the Latino vote, the immigrant vote, the black vote, and all these votes are being counted in that fashion. And I find you are totally right that Mr. Trump has been brutally honest and frank in his choice of words, even though he may not have the most appropriate choice of words. And to that end, I had advised some of his close friends that he should spend some time in the Modi School of Political Economy, because in 6 years of Modi rule, he has never made a single statement against Rahul and Sonia, though they have called him Maut ka Saudagar and Chaukidar Chor hai. Modi didn't reply because he handled the issues. And that's what I wish Trump had done. But on the factors of leadership, trust, and transparency, though he may be disliked by many Democrats, but generally speaking, I feel he gets a very high mark on that. And even in Wuhan crisis, they say that Dr. Fauci misled him. And nobody is evaluating that part of the thing. So how do you see Trump exploiting the enormous negative experience of Biden, who has done nothing, and whatever he has done in his 40, 50 years of life as senator, compare and contrast in 3.8 years of his life?
See, you can't literally compare leaders to leader. right? Every company have tremendous amount of CEOs come and go. Some successful, some not successful, some great, some okay. Leaders change, their personality changes. So we can't really literally say we can learn from them certainly, but we can't do exactly same thing. What Modi is going through is much more different than what Trump is going through. I go through that. Why? But at the same time, let's start with this point. Biden is in the seat for almost 50 years, 8 years as a vice president. What has he accomplished? I do ask, what has he accomplished? My note is I don't see his accomplishment. All I see is he is trying to literally hide his work over the last almost 50 years. It's getting all locked up. We're unable to see. Right now, secondly, unfortunately, the black did vote Democrats automatically. It is the same thing I would say for Indian voters. Indian Americans did voted Democrats, literally, right? 95% voted. The way I say 75% do vote for Democrats, Indians, and 25% they just follow who their friends and families are voting. And the rest is 5%, and I follow in the 5% category. We try to make a decision, an informed decision as to who is who, and then vote based on that. And also based on the past. Now, question is, why did they vote Democrat? Is because they were promised tremendous amount of things, just like what Congress does in India. They haven't fulfilled anything. Today, they're angry at Democrats saying you haven't done anything. And if you look at any cities, any big cities within the United States are run by Democrats for decades and decades, whether it's a Baltimore, whether it's a Chicago downtown, we see a pattern of things, pattern of degradation that has happened. We see that. Now, secondly, why the educated Indian Americans are also supporting Democrats? I honestly am trying to understand why. I don't know, but it's mind-boggling. I say if they're educated, there should be education. Education should enable them to think through. Now, when you talked about education helps me to think through, I'm probably using it, and you're probably using it. Unfortunately, some of the educated person are not using it. Unfortunately, they are just going by what CNN is showing for 3.8 years, what MSNBC is showing for 3.8 years. They're not looking at from a perspective of fact. That's one issue, and it's a psychological issue. Second thing you mentioned in terms of how things have changed in the last 3.8 years. See, I talked about the subversion tactics and the model, like demoralization that happens for 20, 25 years, then the destabilization that happens for almost 3 to 5 years, then crisis mode is where we are today. So what you are seeing is basically November 2020 is the crisis mode. That's why I call it as a point of no return. This particular election is much different from what we saw in the past. Every election, all the politicians say, this is important, you must elect me. But what's happening here today is it's literally black and white. We know if Trump doesn't win, it is going to be a communist country. There was never in the past that it was that black and white, that we knew that if the candidate was not one, we are fighting against two different ideologies. Today, we're fighting against a patriot versus an anti-nationalist. We are fighting against somebody who respects and loves this country and respects what it has gone through and where we are today, versus who literally wants to destroy this country's past. We are fighting against somebody who says that if you work hard and you make $1 million, I'm going to put a gun on your head and take $750,000 out of you, because you worked hard. There's so no respect for hard work, and you literally taking from somebody who has worked hard and put everything, the risks and the constraints and the money and the sweat, and you're giving it away to somebody who does not even understand the value of it. So that's where we are literally fighting against ideology right now. So this is clear. That is why this election is extremely different from what we have seen in the past. Now,
And that's very important point here, because what we are witnessing, you gave a couple of examples. There is definitely a major need to combat thought terrorism, as I call it.
yes.
This is a major thought aberration. And I mean, I call it the distortion. You can go one step further, call it thought terrorism, because people are now threatening. If you wear a MAGA hat, it's an expression of support for your candidate, and there are people who come to hit you. Now that's very disaster. That's why there are people who are silently supporting Trump, even though in the various polls, more Democrats are asked to participate, and less Republicans are. But there was a very interesting data that came about up to June, which said that the people leaning Democrats had become 50%, people leaning Republican were hitting 39%. And that was attributed to the Black Lives Matter agitation that happened here. And that's remarkably important for us all to discuss, because I belong to the same school of thought that you alluded to earlier on, that every single life matters. Now, there may have been systemic and systematic abuse of Blacks, because slavery is an issue here, because Blacks didn't come here like you and I did seeking better life. They were brought here as slaves. So they have a challenge in terms of integration, because I remember my son is in college, and he said, the Blacks from Africa who are in college, their attitude to life is very different than Blacks from America who have a chip on the shoulder to deal with. And that's a very important thing, because we have to, as a community, we have to be sympathetic to the challenge, but at the same time, we cannot encourage lawlessness. Because as you alluded earlier on, that all the large cities have Democratic mayors. What are they doing there? I mean, it was bizarre and shocking and sad to see so many Black people killed in Chicago, Baltimore, New York, and other places. These entire Antifa riots that happened, it was not a protest, they were riots. Antifa got into that. So there is a very distinct challenge that people need to address forcefully. And to that end, I agree with you, it is a defining moment in American life. Because what are we going to do? Respect for law and order that makes the economies grow, because economies like to operate with certainty, the rule of law, that system works. At the moment, there is a crisis. Who is responsible for that?
Well, at the moment, there's a lot more than which is in crisis. I see, we talked about the riots. These riots are not really organic. They are planned. The way you see how it's working, the person who's a lawyer, Pakistani American lawyer who threw a bomb in police car.
In New York.
In New York, and she was literally out on bail the next day. How is the system really working? Who is it working for? That's the question. So when I say that I'm losing faith in the system, I'm losing faith in the system because of people like us who does not have the connection, who does not have the money, who does not have the, you can't just pick a phone call and call Joe Biden. So the system is working for the elites. System is working for the rich. It's not really working it's never going to work for us. That's the direction we're going to. You also talked about BLM. Today we know BLM is not really BLM. The slogan is much different from the agenda. The founder of BLM, Patrisse Cullors, has said they are trained Marxist. Their goal is to oust Trump. That is not a cause. That is a political organization. The donation is transferred to Act Blue, which is a PAC. It's a political action committee. So what you're seeing today, they are collecting money in the name of Black Lives Matter. But at the same time, it's going to a PAC which is going to elect a Democrat candidate. Now, at the same time, when we look at the crimes, when we look at the percentage also, 13% Black population in the United States, but 70% of the crimes are caused by or occurred by Blacks. 60% prison population of was blacks. So my question, when you actually look at overall from a statistics perspective, there are black on black crimes, there are black on white crimes, there are black on Hispanic crimes, there's white on Hispanic crimes, there's white on black crimes. Everything else is muffled except for the white on black crime, which is also very little.
Is this because of the vote bank politics, appeasement of black? Because there was an information, because a lot of blacks are pro-Trump. And even if it is a minor shift of 5 to 7% blacks voting for Trump, Biden has no chance to win. And thus a chaos has been created, as if the disaffection, and I mentioned to you earlier, the distortion of thought that is happening in the society is because of the fact that they want to defeat Trump because, as you said, that's the watershed moment.
Exactly. What you saw in 3.8 years is going to multifold for the next 3 months. It's going to be even more chaotic. Russian collusion, Ukraine moment, to Mueller report, everything came across as a hoax. So today what we see, BLM, the whole concept of reparation and Black lives are not literally, getting the right opportunity, etc. I sympathize for all lives, no matter where. I come from a very, very underprivileged background comparatively to what United States is given to the blacks over here. So when you talk about slavery, first of all, this country today, 2020, nobody's changed, nobody's chained here, and nobody's slaves here. Nobody even is alive who owned a slave here today, first of all. Second of all, if you look at even slavery, today there are 5 countries, I can tell you, Sudan, Nigeria, those are the countries their slavery is happening today as we speak. And Nation of Islam, Louis Farrakhan, he denied that Sudanese didn't have the slavery issue. And we know today, if you combine this 500 to 800K, people are suffering under slavery. And who is their masters? The Saudi Sheikh masters. So why isn't Oprah doing anything for them? Why hasn't Barack Obama did anything for them? Why isn't Louis Farrakhan doing anything for them? Why isn't Al Sharpton doing anything for them? So the whole concept of this country had slavery. It was a past. So we have come across 100 years, for the last 100 years, whatever reforms that happened, dismissing everything and putting everything in the drain, telling that this country still has slavery, is a slap in the country's face. And even the founders, even the folks who has worked so hard, even the first senator who's a black senator from Republican Party, the first black representative who's the Republican Party, it's a slap on them as well. I came here 20 years ago. I've never seen anybody who would discriminate against me as a brown skin. But today I can tell you, no matter where I go, first thing they will see is a woman, brown skin, and an immigrant. These are the identities they have implemented in people's lives, people's minds, subconsciously coming across. When I came over here, I had black friends, I have Asian American friends, but I've never looked at them as a black friends or Asian American friends. I looked at them as a friend. But today, no matter what, you can't even dismiss the fact that they're black friends and they're Asian American friends. So the division that was created within the country is because of chaos. They wanted to make sure the country, within the country, people fight within each other. So we don't really progress. So what happens in that case is the elites like Hillary Clinton, the Obamas of our country, they reap the benefit out of it. They are the one who's behind the border. They are the one who's behind security details. We can't even have a gun. We today in the country, even New York, Chicago, they have the strictest gun law. What happened in the last few weeks? We saw. So you can't defend yourself. You're going to be arrested. You can't defend yourself if somebody comes and shoots you in your own house, or come and breaks your windows and doors and starts vandalizing your property and looting your property. You can't defend yourself.
And that's what I meant by saying that there is a major thought disruption going on in America. And that's very dangerous, because when you forget the basic tenets that made you who you are, because people are willing to come to this country as yet, even those people who hate this country, they want to come here. And what is dangerous here is that if you voice your opinion, people immediately brand you as racist. So, for example, let's take the example of Ilhan Omar, a Congress lady from Minnesota. And she made a statement that American system needs to be totally destroyed. And I tweeted to her saying that missing home already? And, why not fix Somalia? Do you want Somalia to be prosperous or not? Or anybody. We are not trying to fix India, right? We are becoming part of the system and trying to improve it from within, making our own contribution to the process. That is what inspired us to come to America, the beacon of freedom, that you can become what you want to do. But here is a last question on this particular voting. I want to switch over to some conversation on India, our country of origin. But in this country, why do Indians vote Democrats? You have mixed on. I have my own thoughts on this, but why do Indians in bulk number, like 90% of blacks vote Democrat, 90% of the Indians vote Democrats? Why? The question is, they ran away from the oppression of socialist system in India, where enterprise, innovation, progress was all stymied. Government became your my baap. So that's the environment. When you come from here and you see things great, why are you a Democrat yet?
So the way I was trying to analyze this over last few years as well, it's mind-boggling. Why do they vote Democrat? I don't know. I think it's my observation. I think because we're immigrant, and Democrats have projected themselves as immigrant friendly, that could be one of the reasons that Indians feel the Democrats probably are going to be better than Republican opponent. That's one. And then number two is, I would say, from the Democratic candidates as well. As I said, over the last several years, they have the capability and the tendency of promising the world without understanding the feasibility, without understanding whether it's practical or not, or whether even the promise is going to get fulfilled or not. So combining this aspect is also seen in India. Politicians, they try to promise the world to the voters. Before the election, they'll come and they'll even touch your feet in India to vote for, to claim that please vote for me. But once after they are elected, you can't even get hold of them. You can't even make a phone call, even set up a meeting with them. They're gone. They're vanished. They're behind all sorts of securities and layers of paperwork and layers of people between. You can't even reach them. But so to me, I think what Indians saw over here when they come over here, Democrats do the similar thing. So I think they kind of feel at home with Democrats.
Now, here is how I define that, what you said just now. I defined it by saying that you are totally right, and I agree with you on this matter, that they are so remarkably pro-immigrant. They have stolen that issue from the Republicans, because everybody wants people here. Some people want performers, some people want anyone and everyone. So they have chosen the path of unfettered immigration, come one, come all. Mm-hmm. And that entices them to the immigrant voter. Number two, as you rightly said, they promise the moon. And as a very famous author once said, it's very easy to promise to give what you don't have, or you don't have to give. So that's what Democratic Party does, that they promise everything free, medical free, tuition free, education free. And that lulls an ordinary person to believing that, wow, what a great guy. If I'm going to get all these free, then I'm happy. I'm a happy Tom. And that's the issue which attracts people to Democratic Party. But I want to end this conversation about this one. I totally agree with you. This is a very crucial and critical election where things will change if Trump doesn't win. But in favor of Trump, if he uses the campaign in the last 100 days smartly, he will do two things. One is that President Obama had laughed at him when Trump said that he will bring jobs back and he will revive the economy. And he doesn't have a magic wand. That's what President Obama said. He showed he has a magic wand. He turned the economy around. The markets were booming until Wuhan crisis did what it did. Second thing is that this man has not waged a single war. That's important for people to understand. He has been trying to break the mold and the military establishment to bring soldiers back home. Third is that every single Democrat governor from New Jersey to New York, California, Portland, they all praised his support in the initial stages of virus spread. And if he just shows that advertisement, when Cuomo, Gavin Newsom, they were saying that Mr. Trump knows what he's doing, he has a great team, all that he has to do is to do that. I want to switch back to our country, India, our country of origin. We are both US citizens now, but the country of origin is in us. You know, you take everything out, but we remain desis anyway. So that's the word for us. India has been going through a hell of a time in terms of the China imbroglio. Even a tiny country called Nepal is claiming that Ramayana belongs to them because Ayodhya is in Nepal. What is it about India that is a real challenge? And I find it that the liberal madness around the world is related to one observation that I made, is that three prominent democracies in the world, India, United States, and UK, their all leadership is all clearly tilted right of center. And in each of these places, the liberals are going berserk. So even George Soros, made a statement at World Economic Forum announcing publicly that he's setting aside $1 billion to destabilize Modi and beat him back. Now that, in my opinion, is an expression of criminal intent, that you are trying to threaten a country of 1.3 billion people, 1.3 billion people, that you will destabilize a popularly elected prime minister with thumping majority, and you are setting out your goons to destabilize India. What must India do in terms of its geopolitical relationships? Because India has confronted China very adroitly, and India has taken the action against China about suspending economic relationships of the kind, banning apps. That's so much so that Alibaba has moved out of India from Delhi office, and they have closed down the Delhi operations. And Britain has said no more Huawei in another couple of years. US is taking an action. So India has stood up to the biggest bully in the world around us, and Asian countries are observing it. And China is making inroads to encircle India. As a student of geopolitics and what you are deeply involved, what has Mr. Modi done that attracts your attention?
Modi is fantastic, I can tell you that, because first of all, I think as we talked about from a perspective of leadership of a country, the 5 categories that I followed through, he fits the mold for me. So it's perfectly fine for me, a perspective of what he's trying to do for the country. Keeping the soul alive of India, let's say. There's something that I literally say is Modi is the first Indian Prime Minister, actually. Indian Prime Minister who's for India, unfortunately. We have gone through 73 years of tremendous time where we literally were promised the moon, and communism and parties like Congress had different kind of ideas. They've implemented policies that would diminish Hinduism, the Hindu faiths, and literally create demoralize Hindu base itself. Now, why I tell you that it's very important, when we talked about from a Trump's case, how the country for the last for 20, 25 years, they have literally demoralized and created a base, a generation of people who hates this country. And the last 3.8 years, the destabilization went through. Similarly, in India, we have seen that. For 73 years, for several generations, we have gone through that molds of changing, disconnecting any Hindus from the Hindu root itself. Whether it's through Bollywood movies, whether it is through comedy, whether it is through education, the books, the textbooks, media, they're always trying to make sure somehow they want to make sure the Hindu base is rattled enough and they don't feel comfortable, not even respectful enough of their own generation and own history and heritage. That is very fundamental for India. Now, something that I call is Muslims have Mecca, Jews have Israel, and Christians have Vatican. Hindus have what? Hindus have India. Now, trying to make sure that you are literally disconnected from your own root, the Hinduism, the connection between India, the land, the holy land for any Hindus in the world is fundamental. So when George Soros comes and says, I'm anti-Modi, I'm anti-India, I'm anti-Hindu, it makes sense because he doesn't want the nationalist kind of attitude anyway. Today I have seen the George Soros Foundation gives money to PETA India, who has come up with a brilliant idea saying that save cows from Raksha Bandhan, go leather free. When does Raksha Rakhi is a leather Rakhi?
It never was. It is always made of cloth. It is
Exactly.
always made of cloth. It is never made of
or thread.
leather. Yeah, or thread.
So how is Raksha Bandhan? It's an Indian tradition for a brother or so. How is that particular tradition aligned with cow at all, or aligned with saving an animal, let's say cow in such case? So you see the mentality they are trying to target. They will never do it for Eid. The goats are getting slaughtered. The cows are getting slaughtered during Eid and other festivals. Why doesn't PETA India ever said something against Eid, stopping slaughtering of goats and cows? So the mentality they're trying to attack is the Hindus. So trying to make sure that Hindus feel they're not very proud of their heritage. So when you do that, you're literally disconnecting the country alignment and the Holy Land alignment. So now any second generation, third generation Indian, whether it's from UK or United States or somewhere else, they feel their ancestors are Indian, sure, but they don't connect to India at all. And that's something that we are trying to bring back. And then Modi has done brilliant job going to different countries and handing out Gita to the leader of the country. I think that symbolism itself is tremendous for Modi. I think he should continue to do that. Number two, I think the connection to establish Hindus to India must happen right now. As long as Modi is there, we have some hope. Right now, we see tremendous amount of hypocrisy within Indian market, right? As I kind of told you, if you can go and when Ganesh Puja is happening, you can tell them to turn down the volume. But if a mosque is playing azan in 4 o'clock in the morning, you can't go and tell them to turn the volume down. And that's not a nuisance at all. That's not a noise issue. But the Ganesh Puja, the sound, the micro loudspeaker is an issue for the community. So this kind of hypocrisy.
I am totally with you. We are very soon going to be out of time.
Yeah.
But however, this is very important part, and we will have a conversation again on this about Hinduism the way it is, because I always feel that one of the biggest lessons that emerged out of Wuhan virus, and that's where I relate. I have shared this with many American friends and Muslim friends, that just recognize one simple fact of this virus. It has taught the world that it is gender neutral. It is caste neutral. It is religion neutral. It is rich, poor neutral, right? It is national boundaries neutral. It has impacted the world in the same way. If you took precaution, you were saved. If you took liberties, you got hurt. So this is the where we have to come to an understanding that as people, men and women, whether you are whatever religion, whatever faith, whatever color, whatever country you come from, if God created this universe, he gave you and me a nose, and the nose performs identical function. So does every single part of the body in the male and female personalities. So the question here is, praying to whoever is a minor issue. Are we doing the best that we can do as humans to help fellow humans? Every religious text says, help the poor. What distinguishes is that religion, the way it is practiced, is more of a mafia act, where you prey upon the ignorance and innocence or gullibility of people to achieve a particular end, which is more based on ignorance and lack of education. So as science and technology is evolving, the religious barriers are going to fall. And with that, the tradition will fall. And we know now that men are responsible for gender determination of a child. Women are not. So if it is a very perverse logic that people once upon a time all over the world had more than one spouse or wife, because one wife did not deliver a male child. So you had many to have a male child. That is the distortion. We know Earth is not flat anymore. We also know that the thunder and lightning and tsunamis don't happen because gods are angry. It is a natural phenomenon. And to that end, we have to have more conversation, open conversation, because it's not who you pray to, but what you do that eventually defines you. So that's what is important. It has been great to have this conversation with you today. And I really enjoyed your thought process, the way you expressed yourself. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. Thank you, viewers, for being here. And thanks to you. And, it is great to have you, and come back again for this show.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I do want to end with this one, that Modi has really has a very strict action against China, and India has an opportunity to work with Taiwan and Tibet and bring them along together for India. China is Hong Kong is also an opportunity ground, and similarly I think United States has to be very, very strong, and Trump has been strong for us, for the country, and he's in the right direction. I would love to have him back again, because that is going to make sure that our country doesn't derail, it doesn't go into the wrong direction, and people do understand what's the purpose of hard work. And you cannot be simply entitled and ask for money from the government, which is what AOC kind of people have said through the Green New Deal. They're going to give tremendous amount of money, just give away. We cannot allow that, and that's literally going to bring down the country. Being an Indian and a nationalist and a patriot of both the country, Janam Bhoomi and Karma Bhoomi,
as the saying goes, every good conversation must end. So we end today. Thank you, viewers. Have a great weekend and have a great week ahead. Be safe. And namaste is the new greeting format.